Hello and welcome to The Actor and the Engineer. My name is Paul James. I am the actor.
My name is Josh Knapp. I'm the broadcast engineer.
Here we go, Josh. Hey, I wasn't sure if you had pressed record, so I was like, let me give him some indication that I'm actually doing this. And if he hasn't pressed record, I was waiting for that. Hold on a second, look you give. But you didn't give it. So here we are with our favorite movies of the year podcast.
Yes, I'm excited. I love these, and I mean I hope other people enjoy them too. I think that it's good for me to do the look back, even though it's like almost April. But that's the problem for me, at least, is that like I feel like I've been able to catch up with the movies that I really, really wanted to catch up with by now. We normally start talking about honorable mentions, and so that's how I'm gonna go. Is I'm gonna talk about like a couple of things that I watched that weren't even on my radar, and then in filling out all this, like I just have to bring them up. The first one I'll talk about is BlackBerry, the movie about the creation of the phone, the BlackBerry phone, and it's actually way better than it should be. And because I just expected it to be just this kind of like tossed off movie, but it's got great performances from Glenn Howerton and Jay Baruchel. Everybody talks about Glenn Howerton's performance in the movie, but I think Jay Baruchel actually, his character goes through way more things, and his character does have an arc, and you get to see Jay Baruchel play that arc throughout the film. And I liked all the techie parts of it too. But I started watching it on a plane because I was like, oh wow, it's, this is BlackBerry. I don't have to like watch this but I wasn't even able to finish it. But by the time I finished it, I was like on my nice TV, and I was really glad that I did, because there were some really, really great scenes, and it's very well shot. And so I was excited about that one. And another one I'm going to bring up is Theater Camp. Have you seen Theater Camp?
I started watching it and something drew me away from it, but there's so many funny things I think I saw the first hour of it. Okay. And
yeah, I'm coming at it from a totally different, like I've never been to a theater camp or anything like that. Although in high school I was around, the theater crew. It was like debate and forensics and theater, and we all kind of like hung out and stuff in my earlier high school years. And so I kind of know those types of people in that age range, but then the fact that this is focusing on the teachers, I thought that was really interesting, and less about the kids. So, and it has Ayo Edebiri or Edebiri. I'm actually not sure how you say her name now. I've heard different ways. But yeah, so she's plays a small part in that, but everybody else, actually another person from the Bears in that too. So yeah, it was really cool. It was actually another one of those ones that was like way better than I expected it to be. But yeah, so
the setup's great. The setup's great.
That's true.
Mother, son has to take over. The son has no idea what the theater's about. And that guy, I like that guy, Jimmy Tatro. I have seen him in a couple of things, and he
plays that douchey character in a couple of things. Yeah.
Yeah, and he also has this very interesting way he pronounces things, and I like anybody who takes English and uses it the way that they need to use it. So yeah, I need to finish it. It's on the list it's one of those ones that when it gets mentioned, I can't believe I haven't finished it. Like that should have just sang by, but for whatever reason, I don't know what it was. I don't know what it was. Cause normally I don't do that. Normally if I start, I finish. I don't care what time of the day, night, or what's going on the next day. I have to finish a film, but so
yeah,
it's on the list.
Last one I'll say is No Hard Feelings. Have you seen that one with Jennifer Lawrence?
No, but I want to.
It's good. It's weird, but it's good. Like it rides this line where you're like, this could be really, really bad, and it could be like it's putting her character in a really tough situation, but it rides that line. It's got a good handle on tone, which we talk about all the time, and I think that's what ultimately makes me. It kind of once again brings it up into that, like, this is way better than it should have been. It's a very straightforward comedy, like just comedy, and we don't get those very often anymore. So
yeah, it's definitely on the list of want to see, but for whatever reason, it just hasn't come my way just yet. And did you see the Golden Globes when Jennifer Lawrence, when they shot to her and she was like, if I don't win, I'm leaving. So, you know, she's got a good take on herself. And it was nice to see that a comedy, broad comedy, was accepted for what it was. And, you know, a lot of people had some trouble with it because there are some, I've already heard, I don't know, some controversial things in it. But, you know, comedy's comedy, and that's hard to pull off. And for her to come back after having a baby and after the serious movie before that, all the other stuff that she's known for, to come back and to do a full-fledged comedy, good for her. I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, well, and it is funny because it's like they're, you know, it's like, oh, you know, these actors need to, you know, stretch out, or they need to stop doing the same things over and over again, and that's exactly what Jennifer Lawrence has done, and it sounds like she's gotten, I don't know, I guess bad publicity for it or something. I don't know.
Well,
yeah.
There's some stuff in it that people are like, I don't know
well,
if somebody who's an established
an adult
Oscar-winning actress should be doing things like that. That's exactly what an adult.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
You know, people, come on. They put you in this wonderful country that we live in. They put you in a box, and if you try to step out of it or try to rise above it, you can't, because people just see you for what they see you. Yeah. And sometimes when you do rise above it or do step out of that box, people get uncomfortable. So, and plus she's so in your face in her interviews, and she was so all over the place that she dropped down and then she came back, and she had a baby too. So she was like, the hell.
I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah, she had a baby. So yeah, good for her. I can't wait to see it.
What do you got?
Well, strangely enough, I have two that are honorable mentions that I think you're going to be a little perplexed about, and we're probably going to talk about one later on, because I'm pretty sure it's on your list, but I'm not sure. But I want to talk about Saltburn, not that one being on your list. So Here's the thing. I have to mention it because not one of my favorite movies of the year, but people will not shut up about it. And I mean that as in a good way, not a bad way. I'm not criticizing anybody who cannot be quiet about this movie. And it goes beyond the titillation. It goes beyond the controversial stuff. It goes beyond the dance scene at the end. It goes beyond the bathroom scene. There have been a lot of memes, a lot of TikToks, a lot of things about that film, but people cannot stop analyzing that film, where they're like, well, maybe this, you know, people are believing that person that Barry Keoghan befriends in the beginning of the film is actually last summer's visitor. And do you remember the kid who he befriends? Right. So there's all of these theories, and people just cannot be quiet about it. And in a way, you have to give it its props, because people will not leave this movie alone. They keep coming up with new theories and new ideas and this and that, and they bring things to it, or they see things in it that I didn't even come close to seeing. And so I'm fascinated by a collective consciousness when it comes to a movie. And this movie will not let people go. They cannot completely figure it out. And that is an enticing thing to the world, not a perplexing thing, which is what happened to me. I was like, I don't, what is happening here? I don't think this adds up. So I will eventually watch it again. I almost did that the other night, and I just could not pull myself to it. I just could not go into the world. And I'm not sure how much we talked about the performances when we talked about when we did the podcast, but it cannot go unmentioned anymore about Rosamund Pike. I'm sure we talked about her, but did we though? I mean, did we? We did, but it needs to be mentioned again that whatever tone or whatever she tapped into is, I think, what the movie, for me, might be missing. But for other people, it's there. And her performance is outstanding. And all their performances are outstanding. And it's worth a second watch, and I can't wait to see it again. So I just thought...
we're not going to talk about that later. But I will say, I think that we did speak glowingly about Rosamund Pike, and we did talk about that. But I think that for me, it seems like it's maybe something along the lines of like why this is happening. One theory would be that if someone paints a painting and then they leave it unfinished, you can either say that like that's a bad painting, or you can say, I'm going to finish this painting. So maybe the people out there are saying like, I'm going to finish this painting. So that could be a similar... That could be one way of looking at it. Whereas I would much rather go to the movie theater and see a finished painting. So, but yeah, I don't know. We talked about all the the issues we had with it, and I can't say that I've spent too much time thinking about it afterwards. So, and that's the opposite of most of the movies that are on my list. All the movies that are on my list.
Yeah, I agree.
Today.
But people will not let me forget about it. So I'm exactly where you're at. I don't think I've had a conscious thought about it other than somebody going, well, what about this? Or somebody on X bringing it up or whatever it may be. And I'm like, okay, that's an interesting theory, but yeah, I'm not, I can't lend myself to it. And then the other one that's honorable mention, which I'm not even sure it deserves to be on honorable mention, meaning it's been such a film this year, Oppenheimer. And the reason why I'm putting it on my honorable mention is because for whatever reason, that film will not go away. And I'm not saying that in a bad thing. I'm not saying that people should shut up about Saltburn. I'm not saying that people should allow Oppenheimer to go away. But that movie was a phenomenon. And if we've talked about this before, if you look at it on paper, it should not have done what it did. It just should not have. It could have been a come and go movie, but it didn't. It swept the world. The world cannot stop talking about it. And I actually put it on my honorable mention list because I was at work listening to other people talk about it. And I was fascinated by it because they seemed to extrude other things from it that I did not pull from it. I did not see the things that they saw. And the theories that they had and the ideas that they had and the way that their mind was melded into this film was not an experience I had. But because it's a $1.5 billion franchise, or not franchise, but film moneymaker, you have to give it its due. You have to say it did this for this amount of people. Not my favorite movie of the year, but it needs to be mentioned that Christopher Nolan tapped into something. And I think it's all the best parts of his directing and all the best parts of his writing to a degree. I'm hoping, and I've seen the movie twice, I'm hoping one day, maybe 10, 15 years from now, I watch it and I go, oh, and the sky's open and it becomes this magical thing that it has been for other people. But because it has been magical for other people, it needs to have its due and it needs to be mentioned. So there you go.
Yeah. We'll talk about Oppenheimer later on. So last thing I'll say before we start on the top 10s is that my honorable mentions this year are not necessarily movies that were like my 11, 12, 13, because there are movies that are in my honorable mentions I haven't talked about because we've done whole podcasts on them. So I think most of the movies that we had that I had glowing reviews of in the last year, those would be also considered my honorable mentions. So if there's stuff that doesn't show up in here that we did a podcast on that I loved, yeah, I still love it. So there you go. Are you ready?
Yeah. Do you want to explain this really quick? Because we're kind of doing something a little bit different.
Oh, yeah. Well, I guess for anybody who's listened to our other top 10s that we've done is we would go back and forth and then we would talk about the same movie. If it was shared on our list, we would talk about it once at the same time. And we would talk about it at the highest position that it was in on either one of our lists. But this year, we're just going to talk about each movie we name one after the other. And we'll, if a movie shows up on each of our lists, we'll talk about it. One person will talk about it, and the other person will talk about it when it shows up on their list. So my number 10 is Spider-Verse, Across the Spider-Verse, I think is what it's called. So I just called it Spider-Verse 2 on my list because it's like, they're just like coming up. I mean, they're just like, I understand it's tied into the plot, but at the same time, like it's going to have the word Spider-Verse in the name. And this is the second one. So, I loved the first movie, and this movie, it does not disappoint. I think they've gotten better at the animation style and their handle on that, and that all kind of gets out of the way in a lot of ways. It was whiz bang in the first movie, and I was just like enthralled by the things that they were able to do and the ways that they were able to put the characters in different situations and make things inherently cinematic. In this movie, it seems like that stuff is already a given, and they're able to take the characters and push them forward and give Miles Morales and give the other Spider-Men or Spider Pigs and Spider People and Gwen that, all of those other characters, they're able to give them, a better, they're able to give them, number one, great set pieces, and the whole kind of like, headquarters of Spider-Man, like that's pretty cool too. But they're able to show us new stuff, and they're able to push the plot forward, and then also set something up, which I didn't know when I went into this movie. I didn't know that this was more of like a part 2 of 3 as opposed to a straight up part 2. And so the way that it ends is just like, it makes you start, checking your watch for when the next one's going to come out. So I did really, really enjoy it. And I think that it's high level filmmaking, and that is something that I really do appreciate.
And I agree with you. And it's number 11 on my list. I was going to put it in the
go.
honorable mentions, but I wanted to do something a little bit different with the honorable mentions. I wanted to talk about stuff that other people were loving. And, for the reasons that I said, yes. How do you put all those characters in one movie and that style and that kind of kinetic energy that those movies have, and make it clearly work? And they do. And it is as much of a disappointment as it is an excitement that the movie ends with, there's going to be a third part, because you're like, oh no, you're so into it at that point that at the end of the film, I could probably have sat through another 2 hours. If part
like, I need 2 more hours.
Yeah, I could have easily done it. And the fact that they integrate all of those characters into it, it could have fallen in on itself. It could have been one big mess, and it's just clear, precise, and exciting. And I was going to put The Boy and the Heron on my list, but for whatever reason, Spider-Verse just kept coming in. And I'm not saying that you can't have 2 animated films on the list. And I'm happy that The Boy and the Heron won the Oscar. I think it deserved it. And I think the legacy of that, those creators deserve to have back-to-back Oscar, not back-to-back, but, 2 Oscars for 2 animated films that are unlike most animated features that win. So yeah, I cannot wait for the third one. I can't wait to watch this one again. And I can't wait to watch all 3 of them in a row. Maybe not completely in a row, but it's gonna
that'd be a cool like afternoon though, like like get a bunch of popcorn and just do it.
Well, they'll probably do it in the theater, because they've done it with almost
true.
everything else. They did it with the Hobbits. They did it with the Lord of the Rings. They're gonna do it with Dune. Guarantee you, they're gonna do it with Dune.
Oh yeah, in IMAX. Oh yeah. Oh,
and they're probably not good. They're probably gonna do intermission in a different place, because I think they need to connect even though it's not part 1 and part 2 of Dune. It's a reoccurring story, not reoccurring. Continuous. Thank you. It'd be nice to see the last sequence of the first film and the beginning sequence.
Seamless.
It is seamless.
You're right.
It is seamless. It'd be fun to watch, and then put the intermission somewhere before or after that. And then if they go into the third movie, which it looks like they're going to, it's going to be interesting to watch those transitions. So yeah, Spider-Verse, I'm all about it.
Nice. All right, you're number 10.
May, December. I can't stop thinking about this movie. It's haunting me. I want it out. Maybe this is going to exercise it.
Okay.
I just cannot stop thinking about how specific the style of acting is, how specific the filmmaking is, how specific the dialogue is. It just works in this intimidating, creepy, I don't want to be in this world. I don't want to hear justifications for things that I am morally against. I don't want to see. I'm not against watching something that is not in my moral compass. That I don't have a problem with. Mm-hmm. What I have issue with, and what this film keeps itching at me about, is how clearly the justifications for the behavior that is just fundamentally wrong in my book, how intricate the justifications are and how deep they go and how they are committed to that. The filmmakers, the actors, everything. And in particular, we've talked about it when Julianne Moore says, who had all the power? Who had all the power? It's clear who had all the power, but she is completely convinced of something different than anything in my soul tells me is the correct way to be. And we've talked about this, and I know that you've brought up some of the acting style was a little hit or miss for you, and maybe didn't really convince you that that was a believable thing. But I think that's the key to it. The key to it is allowing Natalie Portman to find those moments at the end. Allowing somebody to see inside her world when she's trying to see inside somebody else's world, and what she does and steps over and crushes and drives a mile past any moral outpost that she could possibly see to get what she needs out of these people. And the things that we do to other human beings to get what we need out of them is perplexing to me. So I cannot stop thinking about it. And I was thinking that the hot dog scene, we need more hot dogs, was going to become much bigger of a meme than it is or has been. And it started to progress down that road. But I actually think people are as freaked out by that as they find the humor in it. So it never really took off. Because I think
so it doesn't land as a funny thing. It lands as like a disturbing thing.
Well, I think it lands as both. I think it lands that, but we're not laughing at what we think we're laughing at, in my opinion. We're chuckling in discomfort to the fact that this woman's problem is not the choices that she's made for the last 20 years.
Yeah.
That she's worried about not having enough hot dogs, when clearly there's enough hot dogs. Mm-hmm. I want it out of my head. And maybe I'm going to need to watch it again to see that, but I want it gone. And that to me is something that makes it a clear favorite, which is a strange thing to say. To say this is one of my favorite movies of the year is not the exact verbiage I should be using. It's one of the most perplexing movies that I can't stop thinking about it. And that's why we're talking about it right now. To say it's one of my favorite teeters into like acknowledging and accepting that the people's choices in this movie are okay. And I would never do that. So yeah, it's go away.
Do you think that it's because of number one, it's got an actor in it as one of the main characters. And then it's also it's ultimately a character study of a character study. Like you're doing the character study of the Natalie Portman character, and she's doing the character study of this quote unquote real person in her world. And so it's just that kind of like it's intense from an acting standpoint. Whereas for me, I was more focused on the tone and more focused on the filmmaking choices and what how the director was pushing us. And I know you noticed all that stuff too, but the close-ups of the leaves and the little eggs on the leaves and all that stuff and the soft focus and all of that. But yeah, that maybe I could see where you would latch on to the more character-y bits.
Well, that also is makes it even more perplexing for me, because I can see how the artist will stop at nothing to get what they want, to perform the character by extracting things from people's lives without any kind of moral judgment. And I've seen this in real life, and I've seen people go places that they go to, and it's holding a mirror up to the hobby, the profession, the craft that I find fascinating, but I'm as disturbed by that as anything. Yeah. The scene when she's, whatever you want to call it, rehearsing in the hallway on the doorsteps. Yeah. It's not something another human being should be seeing. I just don't think it is. I'm not judging her, and I'm not judging the film for it. I just don't want that in my soul anymore. Get out. But I also understand that sometimes you go to really strange, embarrassing places, and you really make a fool out of yourself to try to figure out the truth in something. But to try to figure out the truth inside this character, inside these real people's characters, inside this real event, even though it's not said based on real events, but it is based on real events. They purposely made paparazzi shots look like the real situation. Sure. They absolutely did. So yeah. in the best possible way, I need it to go away. Get out. It's a compliment, but get out.
All right. My number 9, Anatomy of a Fall. So Academy Award winner, Anatomy of a Fall. You look concerned that it's not higher, right?
I am surprised a little bit.
Yeah.
Now I'm even more curious.
Well, so for me, like, I mean, when I start thinking back on it, like, once again, great performances, very well shot. But ultimately it's a courtroom drama, and that's a big chunk of the movie. And it's also, it's also kind of like it's less of an exercise for me than some of the other films. Number one, and number two, some of the other films on my list are more rewatchable. And that's what pushed them up in my favorite top 10, but we have a whole episode on it. I really think that it's a great film. And I think it won. I think, I don't know, what did I say? I said The Holdovers should have won for original screenplay, but I'm glad that it won for original screenplay, because once again, it is a truly original screenplay, and it takes certain elements and certain kind of like it doesn't overshow its hand to the audience, I think, and it allows us to live in that weird middle space that most of the world and most of life is. Things aren't necessarily cut and dried. We like to be judge, jury, and executioner for so-and-so down the street who did this one thing, or for this, this famous person who's being, arrested and tried for something, and be like, oh, they totally did it. Or like, oh my gosh, they're so innocent. But this allows us to live and stew in the real worldness of all of that, and to figure out, and to try to figure out what happened. But ultimately, while we're trying to do all that, we have all these characters involved. We have the child involved. We've got the mother. And so, yeah, it's, I'm excited to see it again, but yeah, that's why it kind of slid down, is it wasn't as rewatchable, quote unquote, as some of the other movies on the
Interesting.
list.
Now I'm really fascinated about your list, because I thought I had it pegged. I thought I understood where you were going, but I clearly do not know anything, and I love that. All right, so my number 9 is American Fiction, Core Jefferson's Academy Award-winning picture.
Yes.
There's not much more to say other than people need to see the movie. And when people ask me some of my favorites of the year, that immediately came to my mind. And you know what it did? I started to think about that scenario with other stereotypical scenarios, other people who have been stereotyped, gay people, transgender people. What would it be like if they were to fall under the same trappings that he falls under and have to write a book based on the language that the world is accepting? What would happen? How would that unfold? And it opened it up to lots of different things: how women feel, how single women with children feel, how two dads adopting kids would feel. It just started to go into a bunch of different directions, and it opened my mind to the what ifs. And I think that's why it's such a brilliant screenplay, because, which is what he won for, because it is exactly the opposite of what you think it is. We talked about this on the podcast, that it's a upper middle class family who have a beach home, and they do not look like what your traditional upper middle class family with a beach home would look like. And that is subversive. And the fact that we even notice things like that is an issue. And so I just started to think, well, what if this family was this? And what if this family was that? How would this affect this? And would these aspects of this family in American Fiction, would they be affected the same way if they were whatever, fill in the blanks, single mother with children, whatever it may be? And you have, Jeffrey Wright's Academy Award nominated performance, and Sterling K. Brown's Academy Award nominated performance, and Leslie Uggam and Tracy Ellis Ross, who I hope Core Jefferson makes his next movie about a woman, and they need a lead actress, and I hope he cast her. And if he does cast her, she will probably win the Oscar, because she is a light. and the fact that what happens to her character, and as quick as it happens in the film,
Yeah.
is a devastating thing. And she forever is etched into your mind for the rest of the film, no matter what happens. So it's a beautiful movie. It's really well done. And I love what he said at his Oscar speech. Did you see the Oscars when he said, hey, let me ask everybody a question, is basically how he posted it. He was like, all those people spending $200 million on a film.
Yeah.
And I think I can prove I've said this before too. So I'm, of course, ingratiating myself and putting myself up with Academy Award winner Cord Jefferson and putting my thoughts in with his brilliant thoughts. But I'm sure I have said this, maybe not on the podcast, but maybe, that why not take that $200 million and give it to 10 people and make $20 million movies? Because look what happens when you do it. And he holds up his gold statue. And people now will give him money for his next film based on everything that's just happened to him. So I think that's an important thought that he had. And I loved how he was so professional and respectful of the ceremony, but at the same time, he was like, people, I do have something to say here, and I'm going to be holly jolly about it, and I'm going to do it in a respectful way. But really, honestly, I know 10 other people who could be up here too, and they should be. So if you're going to spend $300 million, spread the love. And look what happens when they do. Because this movie did not have a big budget at all.
No. Well, and then also it's one of those things where it's like, also the fact that the Marvel stuff is kind of like petering out to a certain extent, and they're kind of like shifting their focus to more like the Disney Plus stuff and all that. There may be an opening in there for movie studios to be able to do the kind of like indie shingle stuff that they were doing in the late 90s.
I was going to say, it's happened before.
Yes. And so maybe there's a way to, There Will Be Blood was released by Paramount, but it was released by Paramount Vantage. You know, it's like, it's one of those things where it's like, sure, we'll give you a small amount of money. I mean, There Will Be Blood got enough money. Like, I'm not saying that was an indie movie, but it did come from a director who started in indie movies. And so, and a lot of the other directors did. So, I mean, Chloe Zhao even, like talk about a Marvel person, you know, so she's done both. But there's opportunities there. And I think that there's no reason. What he said actually was like, that's like a Tuesday for them is $20 million.
Yeah.
It's not a big deal. So, you know, if you are worried about making your money back on a $300 million movie, maybe, you know, change your odds, double down, triple down, you know, quadruple down and pay that much less and to more people, and you're going to hit. One of those is going to hit. And when it hits, it'll hit big, and you'll make your money back. So,
and there's always those movies that don't hit that actually somehow get in, and then people start talking about it, and it becomes this streaming thing, and it becomes this. It used to be DVD sales and stuff like that, which is
that's the problem. Streaming doesn't make money. That's the problem.
Right.
Because if you're Warner Brothers and you put it on, you know, put Dune on Max. Well, you're not making any money on that. You may make some money on subscribers, but that's fleeting. But that's the hard part, is that when they were selling DVDs, that was a guaranteed $20 from somebody, and you get to keep that money. But that's the hard part. So
they'll figure it out. They always do.
Yeah, well, I hope so. The writer strike's going to be really hard on the movie industry this year, because a lot of stuff's going to be pushed back. And I guess the acting strike too. I mean, it's both writers and actors. So there's a lot of movies that were supposed to have been made last year that didn't get made and got pushed. And so now there's not as many things to be released this year. So that'll be interesting. My number 8 is Poor Things. Yorgos Lanthimos' Poor Things. For me, I keep thinking about this movie when it comes to, obviously, Emma Stone's performance, but also, like, mainly for me, it's the set design and the cinematography of this movie, and even the score. Actually, it is interesting to me that he chose. This is the first movie of Yorgos Lanthimos' filmography that has a score that was made for the movie, instead of utilizing previously recorded or live played in the movie music. So that it's properly applied in this movie, I think. And then you keep all that, you put all that in the stew of this film, and it makes it everything is pushing the view of Bella in this film, and is keeping us in her frame of mind, and trying to get us to experience things in the ways that she's experiencing them. So I think that is ultimately like everybody rowing in the same direction. So that's what I love about that.
That's a good way to put that. I like when you say stuff like that. I like it.
I didn't come up with it.
So
saying,
what? It's like, it's probably the first time I've heard it. I probably have heard it, but it's like when you buy a car and you're like, look at my metallic blue car. It's the most original color ever. And then you go on the streets and you're like, when did everybody get metallic blue cars?
Yeah.
Has everybody always had it? You think you're original in the fact that you have a metallic blue car. That's me. I think I'm original. And then I hear that it's a common phrase, and I was like, oh, okay. I'm not going to admit I just came to that phrase. So number 8 is Holdovers.
Nice.
We've said what we've had to say about this film. It saved my Christmas. If you need to know about that story, you can listen to our podcast, not to like make it a secret or anything like that, but I can't go back into that right this second, because the Holdovers, it will push me to an emotional state that I appreciate that it pushed me to. And it's a beautiful film. And Da'Vine Joy Randolph won the Oscar as well as she should have. Her performance is stunning. Paul Giamatti is stunning. The tone, and then we started talking about how it reminded us of these 1970s films, and apparently that was something Alexander Payne was going for. And it is a homage. At the same time, it's an imitation, but it never comes across as he's stealing anything from anybody or he's ripping anybody off. He's saying there's a reason why these films were interesting. There's a reason why The Graduate was interesting. There's a reason why all of these films back in the 70s were interesting, and this is why. And it's a character study, and it's one of those movies, when people ask me about it, I go, it's something you just have to sit down and watch. And I know that they're going to have an experience, and it's nothing controversial about it. There's nothing that's going to stop anybody from saying, oh, that's against this belief, or that I can't deal with that, or, oh, I don't like when the characters do that. This is just a narrative that ends exactly where you expect it to end, without even you really knowing that you were expecting it to end that way. Because that last scene in the car and that last shot of what's in the car is spectacular, and it's gratifying and fulfilling, and the humanness of all of the characters. And we talked about Paul Giamatti. I just went off my page. Hold on. Sorry. And Da'Vine Joy, Academy Award winner. But Dominic Sessa, the young man in it. And also Carrie Preston, who some people know her from True Blood. And that's where I first experienced her. And I've seen her in a bunch of different things. But there's the moment at the Christmas party when you find out where her character is versus where you think Paul Giamatti wants her to be or needs her to be. And then you realize this is not going where it's going. But the way she doesn't know, but the way that the actress handles the subtext is so deep and dense and filled with true human emotion. So The Holdovers is one of the best experiences I've had in the movie theaters this year. One of the best. I was so happy to be there on the night that I saw it, and so happy that it came to me the night that it came to me. And I got to stop, because I will start to go there.
All right. My number 7, Killers of the Flower Moon. So,
happy. I'm happy, because if it wasn't there, I would be like, "Oh no, what is happening here?"
No. It's on there. I mean, it's such a I mean, so the story behind how it's made is interesting to me. I read the book, and I had a presumption of how the movie was going to be made, and then it was the opposite of what my presumption was. So that's good. It's good that that Martin Scorsese and Leonardo DiCaprio together as producers, and then also and Scorsese as the writer, was pushing in a different way. So I thought, it's like that's a risk. I mean, it's a risk to take, and he found good actors to surround, you know, I mean, you got Leonardo DiCaprio, you're making the movie. So like now what's the next step? Okay, get Robert De Niro in there and then find Lily Gladstone at the moment that she's in. And, you know, now I even just saw a trailer with her in it going forward. I think it was a Hulu show, I think, that she's going to be in. So yeah, I mean, so that's awesome.
With?
Oh no.
Riley Keough.
Oh, Riley Keough, that's right.
How great is that? I feel not comforted, that's not the word, so assured with those people in it. They're going to go to, can you imagine? Oh, yeah. No, sorry, I'm making a bunch of sub-vocal noises, not really using my words. But when I saw it, I was like, ooh, that's it. Emmys.
So yeah, I mean, and we talked about it in our episode, but production design is really, really good in this movie, and it does feel lived in, and it feels, and they don't pull punches, like literally they don't pull punches, and the things that they show, I mean, it's not like this is the first time Scorsese has been overt with violence, but it's for a purpose. I don't think that he tosses off violence in his films, and he has a purpose for that in all of his films, this one included. So and it's not something that is necessarily like fun to contemplate and to delve into, but it's a story that I think should be told and should be seen. So yeah, and it's done in a really really great way. I just wish he wasn't at the end of the movie. Just kind of pulled me out of it at the end there when he drops in Martin Scorsese.
Oh yeah.
I was like, oh, come on, man. But that's okay. Yeah, it's his movie. It's his millions of dollars. He can do whatever he wants.
Yes, he can. Filmmaker. I kind of like it. We've talked about that. But so moving on, number 7 for me is All of Us Strangers, which I think was on your list that you texted me that you were getting ready to see.
I just watched it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a love story. It's a ghost story. It's all of that. It's a family drama. It's 4 of the best performances on screen this year. No doubt about it. Jamie Bell crushed me. Crushed me. Claire Foy has never been better. Andrew Scott, what else is there to say about him? He's the hot priest, and there's a reason why he became famous by being the hot priest, because he's the hot priest and also he can act. And
I haven't seen him like stretch out this much. Like he hasn't gotten this much screen time in the movies and shows that I've seen him in. So maybe I haven't seen all the Andrew Scott movies.
No, I think you're right though.
But he's a very specific character in Sherlock. He's a very specific character in Fleabag, the hot priest. So he's driving in a lane there, and in this he gets to like drive all over the road in this movie. So,
and he does, and he holds that car down. He is the center of the movie, and Paul Mescal. It's a beautiful film, and that last shot of them on the bed, and it comes without. It's kind of hard to talk about it without doing spoilers. So it's one of those things where it's like the last shot of Killers of the Flower Moon. I don't know how many people realize that was a flower, that design.
Yeah.
And to me, maybe it's what I saw, but at the end of All of Us Strangers, when the camera starts to go away, obviously the cosmic forces of love, all of the stuff in the universe have brought them together, or has it, which is great that it's undefined what exactly is going on. Were they alive? Were they already dead? What is happening here? But ultimately it doesn't matter, because it comes down to the last moment when he says to him, well, I'm here. When you find out what happened with Paul Mescal's character, and he says, and I'm all alone, nobody was here, and he goes, I'm here. I was like, okay, don't start me, Andrew Haigh. Don't start me. Because you have already captured my soul. Writer-director Andrew Haigh, who did 45 Years, Looking, that HBO show that I got obsessed with, and there's no other way to put it, because I've never watched a series back to back. I've never watched it and then watched it again. It's never happened to me. And maybe it's close to home on some level that But to bring that close to home part up, I think minimizes exactly the strength of that show. It should not be about I can personalize that story and make it my own. It's that story made me personalize it and made me make it my own. It wasn't the opposite. And same with All of Us Strangers. And that last shot, as the camera's pulling up and away, doesn't the bed look like a heart? Did you notice that with the red pillows?
The two characters, like the two actors, kind of look like a heart, actually.
Yeah, and the red pillows, the way that they are kind of like, yeah. So
I was actually watching the floor on the sides of the bed, because I was like, how high up is this camera gonna go? But then they feather it out, and then because it just keeps going.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, okay, that's a good trick, but.
I love that that's what your brain was thinking. I love that, like star-crossed lovers and how high is this camera angle going?
I was like, man, how high is this crane? Jeez.
Yeah, it's like those things. It's a terrific movie, wonderful performances, says blah 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 from the Boston Globe, whatever. And you would be like, how high is that crane going? Josh Knapp, actor and engineer podcast.
Really tall cranes in use in this film.
I'm sure they would all get a kick out of that's how our discussion about All of Us Strangers ends.
Oh no.
It's a beautiful film, and I just wish people would explore it.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
It's on. I saw it on Hulu, so yeah.
Yeah,
it's on Hulu.
It's able to be seen.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right, my number 6, The Killer. David Fincher's The Killer.
I was wondering.
So this movie to me is actually it's interesting, because like when I watch David Fincher movies, I'm like, I am strapping in and I'm gonna watch The Game, or you know what, it's Zodiac Day and we're gonna do 2 hours and 40 or whatever 3 hours of Zodiac, But and I do enjoy that stuff, but this movie to me is more of a like snack sized movie. And I feel like I can, and I've done it a couple of times where I'm like, you know what? I do want to see that fight with the Brute again, where, he goes to the Louisiana and drugs the dog and like goes in there and like just gets his butt kicked by this guy, but then somehow gets away and gets the better of him. And so that, that's like a, whatever it is, 15-minute scene, and it's like, it's very snack sized. And, the Tilda Swinton scene I've seen a few times. I think I've probably seen the movie all the way through twice, but I've probably seen, if you aggregate all of the things that I've seen, I've probably seen the movie like maybe 3 or 4 times, but I'm seeing it in like little chunks in other scenarios. So whether it's like scene breakdowns or things like that. So that's the part to me that is, it's like David Fincher made Mank and he's like, this is me, everybody, give me all of the Oscars. And they're like, oh no, you don't get an Oscar. Like Eric Messerschmidt gets an Oscar, it was beautiful, these other people get Oscars, and you know what, and he's like, cool, I get it, I'm going to do my thing. And so now he's doing his thing. And I love it. I really do love it. I'm glad that, like, I don't think he needs an Oscar. And I don't think that he thinks he needs an Oscar.
You say this all the time. Every single time you talk about him, you bring this up. Every time.
Him not needing an Oscar?
Well, you just said, your first statement years ago was that he will never win an Oscar. He's just never going to win an Oscar. Blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, but he's come as close as anybody has come to winning Oscars. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to sound abrasive when I'm like, I'm not aggravated by the fact that you're bringing it up again. I just don't think people who are creative like David Fincher, I don't know him. Okay, next time I have tea with him, I'll tell him you said hello. Sure. But until that happens, I don't know but Mank does not strike me as the film that comes across like he's trying to win an Oscar. And if he's not going to win an Oscar for this masterpiece called Mank, then he's going to go do something called The Killer, because now that narrative has filtered down to Bradley Cooper, and he made Maestro so he could finally win his Oscar. And everybody's like, just give him the damn statue already, and now he can go back to making art. I just don't buy it. I don't buy. Sure, does it filter into their being? I'm sure it does. How could it not? You're up for the biggest accolade you could possibly be up for. It's like thinking about the Super Bowl ring. Of course you're going to think about it. Of course you're going to plan. Of course you're going to get that shelf built just in case, or you're going to have that that special container that everybody has their rings in, and your wife's going to buy it for you on your anniversary. But then you don't win the game, and then what do? You don't motivate yourself to win the next game because you didn't get the ring. I don't think so. Anyway, I interrupted your.
No, I guess
Killer.
I mean he's already made movies, like this pulpier movies like Panic Room, and that aren't puzzle boxes like The Game, or that aren't opuses like Mank or like Zodiac. So I mean it's not like it's way out of left field that he's making a movie called The Killer based on a French graphic novel. That's not necessarily the story, but I think the story is that like he's honing in on things that he's interested in, it seems like, and he's got someone who is high in his craft and in oh my gosh, I am
Michael
blanking
Fassbender?
on his name. Yes, Michael Fassbender. Jeez.
Where are you at? Too much potato
I-
salad and ham today?
I was thinking about him. I was actually thinking about Michael Fassbender driving an F1 for years and then being like, oh, David Fincher wants to do a movie, and so I'll just come out of quote unquote retirement to do a movie for him. So like that's what happened. Like he hadn't been in a movie since I think X-Men, whatever the last one was. And then he, is like, oh, okay, I'll come out of, F1 racing for a little while to shoot this movie. So
That's what Paul Newman did. So,
oh, well, there you go. So he's in good company. But yeah, so that's where I was at. That's where I'm at on The Killer. And I do, it's one of those like rewatchable movies for me. So even if it's not the whole movie, just, pop in a quick segment of it and I can watch it, scrub to the part that I want to watch and watch it.
see, I think, because I know David Fincher, he's my best friend now.
Sure.
I think that right there would light him up way more, that you take the time to see that scene again, or take the time to see that sequence again, or that sequence is in your mind so much, it's like getting a song stuck in your head. You have to listen to that song and then it's gone, which is probably why I'm going to have to watch May, December again.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, I know, right? I'll be in the corner.
Pulls you back in.
But I think he'd be more fascinated by the fact that you find things in his films by watching 15 minutes of it, 20 minutes of it again. Or like we both watched that like 2 times before we actually spoke about it, if you remember. And there's something infinitely watchable about his movies. I have seen quite a bit of Panic Room in segments and all the way through a couple of times. Same with Fight Club. But Fight Club, I get stuck. I can't just watch one thing. It just keeps going and going. Yeah. And Benjamin Buttons is the same way. It just keeps going and going and going. And I also think that there's certain movies of his that do need to be watched beginning, middle, and end.
I mean, yeah, I think Zodiac's that way actually for me. Like,
yeah, I'm not a huge fan of that movie. I need to see it again. I need to see it again. I need to, but The Social Network is one of them where I believe the opening scene is as important as the end scene, and you need to see it in chronological order.
You do, yeah, you're right, because you're right. The end scene doesn't mean as much unless you see the beginning scene.
Right, absolutely, 100%. Yeah. So, I mean, David Fincher, I think he could. I don't know. It strikes me as he's an artist, and artists have egos. So, yeah, do you want a gold statue? Sure. I would love to be part of history and immortalization of the Oscars. Okay, fine. But I think he would gravitate to you at a dinner party and talk to you about that 15-minute scene with Tilda Swinton before he would talk to me about, hey, why never winning an Oscar? He could care less, I bet. I mean, he probably cares, but anyway, there's just so many people in Oscar history that never won or were ignored or don't
He's in
have
good company right now.
Oh, yes. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. It means nothing. The fact that he even attempted to make a movie like The Killer says more about his artistry than anything else that we just talked about. So anyway, going on to number 6 for me is Poor Things. And we've talked about it. And I said on the podcast, and in the back of my mind, let me tell you the truth about something. When we were doing our Oscar predictions, I kept thinking Emma Stone's going to win, but I didn't want to say it out loud because I was afraid I was going to manifest it. And I said on the podcast, if it wasn't for Lily Gladstone, Emma Stone would be winning her second Oscar for tour de force performance. And it is. a masterful performance. And I see why she won, and I'm not upset about it. I still think Lily Gladstone should have won, but that's my personal opinion. But I get why Emma Stone did win. And I do want to say this. The only other thing I'll say about this movie is the production value, all that stuff, which is shocking that I didn't say everything else is going to go to Poor Things. I made a joke about everything else is going to go to Oppenheimer, just to, kind of be facetious about the juggernaut known as Oppenheimer. But the production design, the sound, all the things that it won, it makes sense. 100% makes sense. The makeup, that kind of stuff. I think costume design also, all of those production design things, it won. I will say this. When we talked about Poor Things, I said something along the lines of, it was written by a man, directed by a man, screenplay by a man. Did they have a woman in the room when they were deciding certain things? And I had some ideas about what I thought were trappings and tropes about how men write for women. And then Emma Stone smacked me around because she was in an interview and she said, I've been hearing this thing about this man made this film and man's doing this and all. And she said, well, I was a producer of the film, so where's my agency? You're taking my agency away and assuming I said nothing and did nothing. That says more about your assumption about what a woman in film does versus what actually happened. And I was like, oh, she just put me in my place. And she's absolutely 100% correct. Where was her choice? I assumed that Yorgos Lanthimos just made this film without asking a woman. She was right there the whole time. Yeah. And she was a 2-time Academy Award nominee that night for producing that film. So I apologize to the spirit gods of movies. And I should not be so quick to judge what I think has happened just so I can facilitate some kind of conversation to change that so women do have agencies. She had her agency. She made these choices. They're clear that she was involved. It's clear that she was involved. So other than that, Poor Things is one of those films people will see forever and they will be perplexed by it, maybe not understand it. It's also highly entertaining too. And it will become quotable. There will be things. I cannot stop saying Bella Baxter. For whatever reason, every time I think of her, I have to do some kind of affected voice. I don't know why. Maybe because of the movie. The long and the short of it is that Yorgos Lanthimos is one of the most interesting directors of our time. And I am glad to be alive during his time. And when because they have a new movie coming out, they kind of kept that down.
It was shot in 2022, but yes, it looks good. Kinds of Kindness. So Willem Dafoe, Jesse Plemons. Jeez, come on.
Yeah, I mean, come on. You're exactly right. So So what is your
number 5 for me is Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 1, or maybe they I don't know. I think they might have stopped saying Part 1. Just Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning. This is the movie I've seen the most of from last year because I bought it. It's so easy to just like pop on and start watching it while eating dinner or whatever. And then the next night it's like, oh, do you want to finish Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning? Like, sure. Yeah. Okay. And so, yeah, it is a movie and Tom Cruise knows what he's doing. And I'm excited to see the next, piece of it. Which it comes out this year, I think, doesn't it? But they haven't.
I don't know.
Or did they push it? Maybe they pushed it.
He's all over the internet of running in it again because he's running, and they caught him doing something. Filming
so
for
maybe
it.
They're still shooting it because of the delays. So then I guess that'd probably be next year. But anyway, I'm excited to see the next part of the Mission Impossible saga. But yeah, it's this high on my list because it's so easy to watch and because it knows what it is. Like there's movies on my list that take a lot of really risky, they make a lot of risky choices and they land. And that's why they're on my list. This movie knows exactly what it is. It knows exactly what we as a movie-going audience want to see at certain times going to the movie. Like I am not immune from going to the movie theater to forget about what happened at work or to forget about, whatever else is going on and just like immerse myself in these like, oh my gosh, this is whatever is happening on screen is absolutely amazing. And my hat goes off to all the people, whether it's stunt people or, Tom Cruise himself doing the stunts or whatever. It's an entertaining night at the cinema, night at the movies. So that's why it's this high on my list.
Well, that's what films originated. That's the reason for movies were entertainment, to escape, and they became high holy art later on. And so, well, good for you. I'm glad that that's on your list. That makes perfect sense. But if there was like a board of all these could possibly be on Josh's list, I would put that magnet right over, because on his list, because that's just who you are. All right. So my number 5 is Past Lives. Mm-hmm. I almost watched it again and I couldn't pull myself to it because I just, there's unrequited love, which is tough. And then there's love lost, which is tough. And then there's, love that starts a relationship and you commit to that relationship and you live your life together, and that can be tough and that can be beautiful. And all those loves are tough and beautiful. But this form of representation of love was powerful to me. The fact that not the right timing and not the right place, but yet is a soulmate and it is the love of your life. Even though you're already married and you have a love of your life, and that love of your life is so secure and so strong in what his love is for you that he allows you to figure out whether or not this is what you truly want. That's a powerful thing. And Celine Song, she's a poet. She's made poetry with this movie, and Greta Lee's performance is stunning. And also I have his name up, but I cannot pronounce his name. John Magaro. Is that how you say
I've said Magaro, but
Magaro sounds right. Mark
that's
my
her
words.
Husband, yeah.
Yes, that's the husband that she is married to. And then Teo Yo is the not really ex-boyfriend, because they never really break up. And he comes back into the picture and she has to figure out what she's feeling, and not to take away her agency by saying her husband allows her to do that. But I don't know many husbands that would be like, wait, what? You want to go out? What? Who's this guy? And where? No, that's not happening. And it's clearly set up that it's not a love triangle. It's about love. And that if you love somebody enough, if you love somebody and you're secure with who you are, that is going to come back your way. And so maybe that's the subplot that is not as important to most people, but to me, it's the one that rang so true and so believable. And the honesty with the husband and the concept behind a loving human being who's unconditionally loving you no matter what is a beautiful thing. And that last scene between the two leads and the length of time it takes them to walk down that street is why I can't see that movie again, because I will go there. And I can't right now. Even though I found it a beautiful thing, I can't put myself there right now. I just can't. So it's a beautiful movie. Everybody should see that.
Yeah. Past Lives. All right. My number 4 is Barbie.
Mine too.
All right.
We finally match.
We matched. Yeah. Okay. So for me, this is probably the movie I've seen the second most of all the movies, because it's just on Max and you can just like watch it whenever. And we've got a whole episode on it. It talk about a filmmaker and producer, filmmaker and Greta Gerwig, and producer and filmmaker in Margot Robbie, taking a risk. I mean, it's a huge risk that they took. And they figured out a way with the script, and I know Noah Baumbach helped with the script, but they figured out a way with the script, and then they got the right pieces in place. They set up the chessboard properly, I think, and they just let the game play out. And that's the part that I was amazed by. I didn't know what to expect in the film, and I didn't know that I wanted to see the movie until like the trailer was kind of like, okay, whoa, okay, all right, this is not what I expected. But then once I watched the movie, I was like, yeah, this is this is different than what I expected. This is not, I mean, yes, it's a cash grab, I guess, but
it became a cash grab.
But it is rooted in something that they give themselves the space to explore, and so that's why it's this high on my list. And the performances are what, that they're what solidify this choice. I mean, Margot Robbie and Ryan Gosling and everyone else around them, but it's mainly those two. Just, I mean, they knock it out of the park.
It could have gone so wrong, and it could have gotten $50 or $60 million in its opening weekend because it's Barbie, and then it could have been a mess, and it could have fallen apart, and everybody could have been like, this is why we don't make movies about plastic dolls. And then all of those jokes that they've been trying to joke them on could have been funny. But now they're not funny because what Greta Gerwig did, and Noah Baumbach, they brought truth to the situation. They allowed the characters to be truthful to their needs, including the mother and the daughter. And you know what scene I laugh at in my brain? It's probably insignificant to most people, but when she finds the young girl in school and the young girl is sitting, I don't have it pulled up. Do you have it pulled up? What's the young lady's name?
Adriana Greenblatt.
I like her.
Yeah.
She's cool. I like her. She's going to be something, man.
She's in that Borderlands movie that's coming out with Cate Blanchett.
Oh, okay. Okay, good. I like her. Anyway, and she's with her three friends at lunch, and
yes, and they're like, destroy Barbie.
Yeah, fascist. Yeah. And the one, we don't play with Barbies anymore. Blah blah blah. Oh yeah, Barbie's kind of lame. But and the one girl goes, I love Barbie, and they look at her, and she's like, I loved it. I love Barbie. I don't.
And they're like, not the time, Janet.
Right, but it's just such a human moment. Like, I loved it when I was a kid, and I still kind of do, is the connotation that she has. And it's it's a blip in this movie. It's a very small blip, but for some reason it fills me with joy every time I think about that. She's just kind of standing up for herself almost unconsciously, the way that she flips it off. So everything that you said, plus the fact that they brought such truth to something that I don't think people were ready for it. There was so much magic in the truth of that. The Rhea Perlman character, although they skirted some of the controversy that they
called
put
it out
in,
a little bit.
They called it out. They called it out enough
tax
for
evasion
me,
or whatever.
Yeah, enough for me to know it was in there.
Yeah.
And then of course the scene at the bus stop with the elderly lady is just poignant and beautiful. And then the truth at the end, when she apologizes to Ken about taking him for granted, because that moment would not have worked if it wasn't for the moment when he sets her up and says, so how does that make you feel?
Yeah.
It would not have worked. And without those two performances, and of course, America Ferrera's Academy Award nominated performance and the speech, and everybody infinitely talking about that speech, deservedly so. So I believe that became a cash grab. I don't believe it was ever set up to be. I'm sure they were hoping for the best. I think Greta Gerwig and Noah Baumbach and everybody involved, Margot Robbie, all wanted to tell the truth about this character in this situation. And the setup is so brilliant that it's about almost middle age. It's kind of hard to call America middle age. She's got a teenage daughter. All of this is facilitated by her need for something she's not getting in her life. And that's powerful. And it is the movie I will infinitely watch for the rest of my life. And I will be a proud watcher the rest of my life, because if you get bored with the narrative, which is impossible to do because it is funny and clever and poignant all at the same time, the production value is outstanding. And I'm so happy that Billie Eilish and her brother Finnegan, Phineas, what'd I say? Phineas won the Oscar because Barbie did not get shut out. So,
oh yeah, that's true. Yeah,
something to
make
my life a little bit better.
All right, my number 3 is Oppenheimer. So
wow, it's high.
It's high. It is high, and it's because Christopher Nolan makes movies that I gravitate towards. I just rewatched in the theater Interstellar last year, and that movie, he makes powerful movies, and Dunkirk, just like these are his like you know, not top line movies, and they still, you know, punch above their weight. So I love The Prestige, which is a small movie, but it still is, you know, is watchable and has great performances in it. But I think Oppenheimer is kind of like, and Tenet was my number one movie of the year, whenever it was, 2020. So it was my favorite movie of the year then. So, I mean, he knows what he's doing. He knows what he likes. He's got a great producing part. So speaking of women in film, Emma Thomas is his producer and his wife. But, I mean, that's a woman who's very high up in Hollywood and who knows, you know, is definitely a tastemaker when it comes to knowing how to get films made. So so both of them working together on the last however many movies that they've made together. But with this film, he found this character piece and had enough meat on the bone as far as the cinematic flourishes that he was able to do in this film to get people into the theater, but then also hopefully he was able to get people to think about our history at the time, and then also just the American ingenuity period, and our ability to come together, and our I mean, just the what happens when you get a bunch of really, really smart people in the room and you get all of them on the same task. And so the pacing of this movie is probably the best. Like, the editing of this movie, I would say, would be the highlight for me, because it is a long movie, but it keeps moving. And I think the fact that you have the test was about halfway through the film. Yeah. So that's the whiz bang in the movie, but that's about halfway through the film. And so, like, you know, we get this propulsion, for lack of a better word, getting us to that point in the first half of the movie, but then you kind of have the rest of the film to see how his life is affected, you know, after that. So I think that might be the part that Christopher Nolan is more interested in, is the aftermath of all of that. But he has to do the first part to get to the second part. So, which is probably why the movie is so long, because, you know, you can't just be like, oh, look, there's an atomic bomb, and Oppenheimer was kind of important, and then now let's figure out, you know, all the rest of it. So you need all that. So then I think that's why the fact that the film doesn't sag for me at all, that's the part that kind of amazes me, that it's such a long movie, but it doesn't feel that way. So that's a lot.
Well, I'll say two real quick things. The second time that I saw it, I was mesmerized by the fact it did not seem long, because after you've seen it and you know what's coming on some level, you can get a little bogged down in the length of the film. It did not feel that way the second time. So I think you're right about that. And also, I believe it's the type of movie, and I've said it before, something about it I'm resisting. I don't know what it is. There's something about it. And maybe that's just because it just is not my thing for this year.
You're so counterculture. You're such a bad boy.
Yeah, that's me. Counterculture. Everything about
You don't like the movie that made $1.5 billion.
Yes, I do. It's called Barbie.
Well, it's true. Yeah. No, they both.
I mean,
yeah, they both made about.
No,
over
it's
$1 billion.
not that. It's that I think I'm asking the wrong questions. I think it's, and I've always put it on me. But I will say this: they did not show clips of the acting Oscars at the Oscars this year, which is a mistake. They got to stop doing that. I don't know why. They need to hire me. No. I keep telling them, stop doing stuff like that. I get it. You bring it out the old Oscar winners. It's a celebration, but do it quicker and show a clip. Because when I saw the clips that people put together online, not in protest, but in, hey, look how great this is to see these 5 nominees together. A lot of people don't see all of the movies. They only get to see it on Oscar night, and then they go, oh, that person oh, that person won. Oh, I see that in that clip, that kind of stuff. Not to minimize somebody's performance to one little 3-minute clip, but sometimes you can do that. And that's good because then that's the catalyst for somebody to go and watch the movie later on. But they showed the scene in this clip of the best supporting actress of Emily Blunt when Oppenheimer goes running out to the woods and is hiding underneath the rock, literally.
Yep.
And she's like, you don't get to do all of this and then whine about it. And I don't think that scene ever rang true to me until I saw it in that clip. And I went, oh, that's pretty powerful. So I think it's a movie that will eventually all gel for me. And I'm going to think it's a masterpiece. Maybe not, but yeah, I'm glad that it's high on your list. I'm glad that people talk about it. I'm glad that this movie on paper should not have made $1.5 billion and should not have sparked a fun little competition with Barbie. And it's kind of fun. They made fun of it at the Oscars, and it's still a movie that brought a lot of people together to watch it, and people talk about it. And I think what else can you say? That's what I think makes a great movie. All right. So number 3 for me is Zone of Interest.
All right.
I almost started watching that the other day and I was like, nope, I cannot do it. And strangely enough, Under the Skin and
Birth?
No, the other one.
Sexy Beast.
Yes, thank you. I just saw Under the Skin in a hotel room. It just was on. And it was in the first 5 minutes that it came on, and I rewatched that. And then Sexy Beast was playing on that same cable channel. I can't remember. And I was like, is this because of the Oscars? I'm not sure. And he is by far one of the most unique filmmakers of our time. And he's only made 4 movies, Jonathan Glazer.
Yeah.
It's unusual. And I keep seeing it. Here's how much Zone of Interest affected me. I was looking online about something, scrolling, whatever. And the scene when they were in the river was the scene. And I was like, nope. And I went past it really quick because I couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. It's a masterful piece of work. It is something that can only be watched and really not talked about or described, although you can talk about it, you can describe it. But really, it's a viewing experience. The feeling and the vibe, for lack of a better term, it's like nothing I've ever seen. It's unusual on so many different levels. It has been criticized recently about how it can be about what it is and not include some aspects that we traditionally are used to including in stories about things about this story. And I get why people are saying that, but
You mean like why it's not more graphic? It's about the Holocaust. Why aren't you seeing people getting tortured?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. It's a Holocaust movie without Jewish people is basically what people are saying. But actually
made by a Jewish person.
Correct. The fact that that's all I could think about when they were in their garden was the Jewish people on the other side of the wall says more about the filmmaker than what people I think are just judging superficially from what they might not know. And then you have the Apple Girl too. So I don't know what else to call her. I don't mean any disrespect by calling her that because it was a powerful part of that movie. And just that segment alone is enough of a reminder of the event that it shadows everything in that film. So I don't think it's a legit criticism. I think that's a knee-jerk reaction to maybe something people don't really understand, but it is a powerful movie, and it's just like saying May December is one of my favorite movies of the year is a weird thing to say. It's not that I can't wait to see it again, because I think that's a weird thing to say. I can't wait to see Zone of Interest again. It's my Saturday night popcorn movie. It's not that at all. It's that it has possessed me in a way that I am going to need to see it again to exercise the thoughts I've had, or to fill in the blanks of the thoughts that I've had, or to understand it on a different level. And I think that when we minimize a film by saying it isn't what I thought it should be, then I'm not sure that that's the subject you should be talking about. The subject should be, how did that movie make you feel? And it without a shadow of a doubt made me think, and I am still thinking about it to this day, to the point where just the idea or just the images in my mind are strong enough to where I'm like, I can't expose myself to that right now. So it's a stunning masterpiece in my opinion.
I agree. Maybe I'll talk about it in a little bit. My number 2 is The Holdovers.
What a shock. Oh, you're so sweet. You're such a good person. That's really sweet. Amongst, well, I mean, yeah, take a compliment. You're a good person. And that, like, your second favorite movie of the year after The Killer, after Oppenheimer, after all these people who are just like showing the worst part of human
Killers
nature.
of the Flower Moon.
Killers of the Flower Moon. I mean, you name
Anatomy
it.
of a Fall.
Anatomy of a Fall. And The Holdovers is your number 2. It's sweet and endearing.
And I think it's for me, and we talked about this, we've not done an episode on it, which is crazy, but I think we've talked about this movie more than we've talked about most of the other movies last year.
I think you're right.
So, and for me, I'll bring it up again. I saw it. I had COVID. It was on Peacock. I just it was there. And I was like, oh yeah, Paul Giamatti. Okay, well, I'm not doing anything. I'm sick. And it's, it was January or whatever, right after Christmas. It's like, oh, it's a kind of a Christmas movie. I'll just put it on. And I was surprised by the movie, and I don't get surprised by movies very often because I kind of stay, watch the trailers. I get into the industry part of it, and I'm like, oh yeah, so I know this movie's coming out and this actor and all that. But this kind of went under the radar, and I knew it was Alexander Payne. And the last few movies, Downsizing, not the biggest fan of that movie, although I did like Nebraska. So I was just kind of like, fine, I'll put it on. But then it kept surprising me over and over and over again. And like we talked about, the fact that it's such a lived in film, like everything feels that of that era. It is not a movie about the 70s. It's a movie in the 70s. It's a movie built into that. Like, I feel like I'm being transported as opposed to like I'm looking through something and into it. So I'm there with them. And so that it says a lot. It's the costumes, it's the school, it's the setting, it's the characters themselves are in a particular time in American history, whether it's racial, tensions, or whether it's Vietnam, or whether it's, high class versus low class, or whether it's, all of these things. That's all in there. It's in the stew, and we get to kind of like be in that, but we get shepherded along by great performances by Divine Joy Randolph and by Dominic Sessa and by Paul Giamatti. So I mean, that's the part that excited me, and everybody was necessary. And I know it seems a little bit like when the other kids left to go on the helicopter ride to skiing or whatever, like I kind of felt like, ooh, this seems like a bit of a contrivance, and it seems like, okay, this seems like a potential misstep. But it wasn't. It was necessary, and it was the right thing to do in this case. So, so great script, very well directed by Alexander Payne. He knew what he wanted, and I love that, like, confidence in. I mean, Christopher Nolan, all of these, everybody, Greta Gerwig, Christopher Nolan, and even on your side, Celine Song, like, she knew what she wanted. So, like, that's, even though they're at different parts of their careers, whether it's their first film or whether it's their, Martin Scorsese's 40th film or whatever it is. That's what I love about it, and big swings. And this was a big swing. So I will definitely watch it again. I mean, I've seen it a couple times, and it's something that it feels so lived in, and it feels comfortable, even though it's not necessarily a, comforting film. But you're right. And I think for me, maybe why it feels comfortable is like what you were talking about at the end. It's like, I know this, I know these beats, I know these character beats, I know these story beats, I know this. and it's done really well. And maybe it's not surprising, but it's also right. It feels right. So yeah, there we go.
It is surprising because you almost take it for granted that you know that this is going to happen, but then you kind of forget about it and it happens anyway. And you're like, oh, I'm so glad that happened, because if it didn't happen, it would not have been right. And I also want to say one last thing about it. It's a holiday movie that I think could become a holiday tradition, but not necessarily having to be at the holidays in order to enjoy that movie throughout the year. But it because of the way it fell into my life, or nothing fell about that. That was directed. That was all happening the way that it was supposed to be happening. Yeah. It could be a feel good holiday thing with real texture and real characters and people with real life stuff. And that's hard pressed to do, because you don't want to do the gushy holiday feeling film, although you do need that in this movie, and it's there, but it's not the reason the movie exists. So yeah. So, okay. So my number 2 is Anatomy of a Fall, and it almost made it to number 1. And I know it was lower on your list, and I can appreciate that, but I am perplexed by the thought that we understand and know other people's relationships just by what we think we've seen, or what we think we know, or by the placement of, in this movie, a body, that we think we understand somebody's relationship, the inner workings between two people who are obviously intimate and obviously have had a relationship for a long period of time. And she says it in the movie. She says something along the lines of, you think you know what's going on between us because, yeah, sure, if I sat here and told you this side of it, then you would see it from this point of view. But just because you hear this or think you know this doesn't mean you understand what happened between us two. There's no way you will ever get to know what happened between us two. And the fact that somebody would immediately assume the worst instead of assuming that it could just have been an accident, or like we've talked about before, suicide, whatever it may be. I have my own ideas of what I'm thinking it is, but I will say this.
Did you hear the dog theory?
No. Is there the opening? See, it's the key. That dog and that scene is the key to the movie, and I cannot unlock it. Okay. I cannot figure it out. What's the theory? The opening sequence?
No, that the dog, that she was asleep and he was upstairs working up there, and the dog came up and he accidentally like tripped on the dog and fell out the window. Like the dog got in his way and he kind of like got tripped up and he fell out the window.
They just love that dog. They want it to be part of the dog, and they want to forgive her, because what happens at the end of the movie is that you do judge her and you do accuse her and you do think she's done something, that they're trying to convince you that she's done something that even instinctually I didn't believe that she did. Mm-hmm. But yet we cannot stop from pointing fingers at people and knowing what we think we know. The dog thing is that opening sequence with the dog, where the dog comes like down. In what's he looking at? Who's he looking at? Why is he afraid? Why is he whimpering? What's going on with that dog? That is the key to the movie. For me, it is. Yeah. And we've talked about this, that it could possibly be this or that. And in her Golden Globe win, she said something about suicide, which I thought now.
Really? You just seen Trier?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Didn't we talk about that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yes, I'm sorry I didn't say her name. And now I'm thinking maybe she just said it to like make it even more perplexing for people to understand this film. I cannot wait to see it again, to see the difference between what I thought was happening versus what actually was happening versus what I believed happened. And that's what's happening to the main character in the film. And there's stunning performances after stunning performances. Yeah. And so, yeah, Anatomy of a Fall.
Well, we haven't said Sandra Hüller's name, but
yes,
she was the star of Anatomy of a Fall, and she was one of the stars of my number one film, Zone of Interest.
Really?
So, yeah.
Ooh, you're back.
I'm back.
So, okay. So, your second favorite movie
of
the year is...
Tenet was my favorite movie of the year in 2020. So, like, just kind of like reel it back. Like, it's okay.
No, I'm not saying... you just Anatomy of a Fall me. You just assumed you knew what I was going to say. What do you think I was going to say?
It's a bit crazy that that's like my quote unquote favorite movie of the year. But
wrong. Yeah. See?
Okay.
Yeah.
All
I
right,
am the
let's
dog,
go. What do you got?
you are misinterpreting my scenes. Thank you very much. I was saying that I find it fascinating, and it's also perplexing, and also it lights me up that your second favorite movie of the year is The Holdovers, and your first favorite film of the year is Zone of Interest. That says how complex and how multidimensional your ideas of movies are. Ha! Take that.
Okay. Well, all right. I sit corrected. So the hard part is by saying like my favorite movie of all time is Raiders of the Lost Ark because it's fun and it's exciting and it's energetic. This is the best movie, in my opinion, of 2023, The Zone of Interest. So as far as like something that I'm just gonna, like throw in and watch on a Saturday night, no, I'm probably not gonna watch Zone of Interest on a Saturday night. But I have seen it a couple of times and I've gotten something different out of it each time. And so, we have our whole podcast on it and stuff. What was the criticism that I was trying not to talk during your part of Zone of Interest. What was the criticism that you were saying?
It was a Holocaust movie without Jewish people.
Yes. And then the other criticism was that they weren't explicit with showing what was going on in the concentration camp. But to me, the best horror movies are the horror movies that don't show you things. Or the fact that we talk about all the time, Jaws was so great because you didn't see the shark. All of that, like the specter of the shark is way scarier than the actual shark. Once you put a stamp on something and say, this is exactly what happened in the concentration camps, you minimize or you reduce the horror down to a containable area and say like by saying this is what happened, you're saying, maybe only these things happened. There's no way that we're going to know all of the horrors and atrocities that happened in all of those concentration camps. There's no way. So by putting it on film and by saying like, this is the representation of it, like you're minimizing that horror. So that's not a good argument to me. I think that by what Jonathan Glazer did and the choices that he made in making this film, he's actually giving you a realistic viewpoint of the concentration camps and the dichotomy of the scenario of there being real lives, real people with real lives that were also responsible for, destroying the lives of millions of people. And so that's what is valuable to me, trying to see that dichotomy and trying to analyze it and isolate it. For me, it's very high filmmaking, and so that's the part that lights me up and that gets me engaged in the film. Is that I know that a lot of care was taken in making the film. The fact that they're working with very strict rules, whether it's they don't use any artificial lighting, they're only using practical lighting inside of those houses and practical lighting outside and no like big huge setups. They're trying not to glamorize what's going on in these people's lives and make it look Hollywood. So that I think really it translates to the audience too. So yeah.
And also, not to labor a point, the fact that people are wondering why Jewish people are left out per se is, in my opinion, the exact point. The fact that you can still feel what's going on over that wall, know what's going on over
There's
that
a presence.
wall.
Yeah.
Yeah. The atrocities are happening and you're aware of them. It's to set it with people who are not being affected by that in their everyday life and being able to live on the other side of that wall and be able to go to that river and be able to do the things that they do. And they have desensitized themselves to the fact that there's human beings is and will always make it present for me. And sometimes when you take the image and bring it down to all the shoes, or all the sun, all the glasses, or all the teeth, or the fact that the sun's looking at the teeth, and those are teeth of a human being that were murdered. The fact that that's what you see makes it so much more powerful to me. Not that not seeing it or seeing it doesn't make it powerful. It's just the whole idea that they're there, but yet not seen is actually, I think, the point.
Yeah.
So
It's that they are trying to separate themselves from that situation, but they can't. It's impossible.
right.
Because it's right there. And even if they lived 5 blocks away or 5 miles away, it's still gonna be there. And so this is just the immediacy and the proximity shows you that you can't get away from what they're doing. So that's that's the value of that, I think. So
It's a powerful film.
yeah.
All right, so Killers of the Flower Moon is my number one film of the year. It's my favorite movie. I can't wait to see it again. I wanted to see it again, but it's only being shown. I think you can buy it for $19.99.
I mean, it's on Apple TV Plus, but yeah,
right.
You could get that for a month and then watch it. But yeah,
yeah, which I could
watch it 30 times.
Yeah, I can't stop thinking about it. The whole idea of what they did to the Osage people and why they did it is perplexing, and I was dumbfounded by it. The performances are stunning. Once again, Lily Gladstone, who is now going to be a working actress, which I'm happy about. Not that she wasn't before, but hopefully this puts her in a different place. And, it's a Scorsese film with De Niro and Leonardo DiCaprio, and we were talking about her. That's enough said. Her performance is stunning. It's so human, so real. A lot of people have criticized the film about him being too old, but then if you look at the picture of the real guy at 19, he looks older than Leo does now. So, it's interesting what people put on to things. And they also talk about the length of that film way more than they talk about the length of Oppenheimer or anything else. And I'm not exactly sure why that is, but it doesn't matter, because for me, the 3.5 hours or however long it was, everything was a necessity. There wasn't one frame that I could have taken out and made the film faster and better. There's a reason why Scorsese does what he does. And you're right. He does not pull punches when it comes to the violence, as well he doesn't in all of his films that are filled with violence. And this is purposeful. There's a reason why you need to see what you're seeing in the film. Sometimes it's graphic and sometimes you don't want to be looking at that image, but those are real human beings that these circumstances happen to. And we need to know the realism behind. We can't gloss over that kind of stuff. We just can't. Yeah. And something about the film stuck with me, and I cannot believe, not to talk about all the negative things that surround movies, but I still can't believe it got so sidelined. I can't believe that it was not that the competition with the Oscars matters to me on certain levels it matters, but most levels it really doesn't matter to me. It doesn't change my idea of what I think is an artful film, and I think Killers of the Flower Moon falls under that category for me. It is a work of art, but I was surprised that it wasn't more neck and neck with everything, and it got shut out at the Oscars. It didn't win anything, and it was nominated for a lot, including, once again, production design, which, I jokingly said they built a town in Oppenheimer. That's why production design is probably going to win. And somebody was like, well, they built a town in Killers of the Flower Moon. And I was like, oh yeah, they did, didn't they? That to me is a compliment. The fact that I just thought that town existed. I just didn't even think about them having to build it. Now, granted, in Oppenheimer, they build the town. So you are seeing that. Yeah. And that is a thought. But the motivation behind Robert De Niro's character was clear. The motivation behind why Leo was doing what he was doing was clear. The motivation behind Lily Gladstone's character was clear. And the fact that you think that it's not clear and that she's really aware of what's going on the whole entire time is masterful. And then there's a spirituality to it that I think is also unsung about the movie. So I believe in years to come, people will lift that movie up higher than they might have been lifting it up this year. I think most people thought, oh, it's just another Scorsese film. Let's just nominate it because it's a Scorsese film. When in fact, in my opinion, I think, side note, I saw an interview with Tarantino, and he was talking about making his 10th and final film. And they asked him why. And he said, because I don't want to be the old guy making movies. And, oh, remember back in the day when he made Kill Bill Volume 1 and how great he was and blah, blah, blah. I want to go out at the top. And I can appreciate that. But then I immediately thought, well, Scorsese just did it, Tarantino. He just did it again. He has made his umpteenth millionth film, and it is a masterpiece. And I believe it will be praised differently 10 years from now than it is now. It did very well critically. It did very well at the box office. It did very well at the Oscars, meaning nominations and all that other stuff. And none of that means anything. I believe it's a masterpiece, and I believe its spirit, its essence is in the right place.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd be interested to see, do you think the same thing about The Irishman?
No.
Do you think The Irishman's going to get like revisited? Okay. Cause it's a similar thing. It's made by, financed by a streamer, long movie, stars in the movie, but playing bad guys, but it's a different subject matter. It's a different feel. It's totally different. So I just wasn't sure.
That with any Scorsese film, it's like a Fincher film. You can extract stuff out of it. You can pull stuff from it, and you can see what he wanted to present. I don't think I've once thought about The Irishman since I saw it, one. And also somebody asked me the other day what my favorite Scorsese film was. And I was like,
couldn't think of anything.
Well, it's not that I couldn't think of anything. It's just that how can I say one is
I gotcha.
Not better, but of course everybody goes to Goodfellas and says that's his masterpiece and that's their favorite film. And I get that, but it's not my favorite Scorsese films. And so I was thinking to myself, and I was like, is it recency bias for me to say Killers of the Flower Moon? Is it too soon? I, of course, went to After Hours and Cape Fear. Those two films I think are unsung on some kind of level, although people celebrate them, and King of Comedy and those kind of films that most people don't really know about per se, outside of people who love Scorsese. But I think the reason why I can't say what my favorite film is because he has one masterpiece after the next, after the next, after the next, and they all have something to say. And Killers of the Flower Moon has something to say.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's a great way to end it. So our top 10s for 2023. So now we get to keep watching movies for 2024. I've already seen a few of them, actually. I'm seeing Civil War. Is that what you think we're going to do next?
I don't know, but that scares me. That movie.
It's a little scary. It is a little scary.
Yeah, but
it's got Jesse Plemons and Kirsten Dunst in it.
It's about a civil war in the United States.
It is about a civil war in the United States.
But it's Alex Garland, so I mean,
I know
he's done me right.
Didn't he just do Men like last year, or was it 2 years ago?
No, it was about 2 years ago.
2 years ago.
I saw a whole thing of a breakdown of Annihilation, and I was perplexed by it. I was like, I got to see this movie again. No, not anytime soon. So yeah, Civil War is. If we talk about it, it would give me the reason to see it because I had been in denial about seeing it. But it's him, so.
And Nick Offerman's the president. What could go wrong? So, all right. Well, you can check us out on the web at actorandengineer.com. You go to facebook.com/actorandengineer, and you can find us on YouTube. Just search for the Actor and the Engineer podcast, and we'll see you next time.